Hello, everybody. So, this is a summary, as you can tell by the title. This is a summary of what I observed today at Beaverton Transit Center while I was there. So, interestingly enough, there was a shocking lack of people at the transit center. Like, there just wasn't really anybody going through it. In fact, for being rush hour on a Monday, like a lot of people were saying, it was like a freaking ghost town. I have no idea why, but it was. So, that being said, there wasn't any chaos really to document, really at all, in fact, which was kind of unfortunate because that would have been super entertaining to get. Um, but, that said, the first thing I observed was the fact that there was a massive, which is rather predictable, a massive layover train at the transit center. Just a ridiculous amount of buses laid over at the transit center, and they were just some of them were left on, some of them so they were just wasting gas. Some of the others were, uh, just off parked with nobody in it, because of course which is kind of interesting because apparently a lot of people didn't expect this, which I don't know why they wouldn't have, but they have a strict policy now with this change of the bus drivers are only allowed to drop off everybody once they arrive, and they cannot allow anybody on. They have to park the bus, lock the doors, and wait for their turn to go and do their route. So, because of that, there's a lot of pissed off people, although they weren't really like as typically irritated or pissed off as you think they would be. Um, which was also kind of surprising. They just kind of shook it off, I guess, probably because they had enough of shit probably for the day. They're already worrying about everything else. So like at this point, it's like you could expect it when you're relying on Trimat like that. But yeah, so they absolutely couldn't stand that. Second thing I noticed was in the layovers, there was consistently two of the same buses. Most of the time they were back to back. They would arrive, and they would literally just sit there in their layover positions for anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes, both buses. But there'd be two of the same bus route at their terminus of that end of the route, of course, at Beaverton Transit Center, which doesn't really make any sense, especially considering there's already a limited set of space for buses to be able to stack up and lay over anyway. So that leads into the third observance I had, which is that there was a fuckload of 78s, and I don't know why there was, but they always came in pairs, and then they'd both be in the layover positions back to back, and they'd sit there for like 5 to 15 minutes, and then they would go. One would take off, and then it would be about 2 minutes later, and then the other one would take off on the route, which I don't know why the hell they did that. But there was at least, I think, 6 or 7 78s while I was there for the roughly hour and 45 minutes I was present, which is also really freaking abnormal for 78s to be so many of them. I didn't see any 76s until the last 20 minutes I was there. There was two of them that were in layover that had arrived at some point, probably when I was over on the Max platform on the opposite side of the transit center. But there was two 76s, but they were both being laid over, and that entire time there wasn't a single 76 that actually took off for whatever reason, which is weird. But okay, sure. So yeah, that was a thing. And it also leads me into the fourth observance I had, which is that the bus drivers fucking hate it. You can tell they fucking hate this new system of splitting 5 bus routes on one side of the transit center, only going to one stop, and only servicing that one stop, and then same with the other one. And with so many freaking buses there all the time, and layover and all this other stuff, there's so much more confined space for them to maneuver. And they also, because there's 5 buses sharing both stops, 5 buses in one stop, 5 buses in the other, that pissed off the drivers more because they have a fucking schedule to maintain, and TriMet's really nasty when they decide to reprimand drivers for something that really is their own creation, not the driver's problem. It's just the drivers get screwed over by these decisions that their employer, TriMet, makes. And so then they are the ones who get reprimanded for it because I guess the heads have to do something to, show they care. And then that's what they do. They reprimand them and punish them for something that they can't help because it's those heads that are punishing them for it. Well, they're punishing them for their own doing, even though the bus drivers can't help it. So the bus drivers were really irritable, but they were were less irritable at the people, and they were almost entirely irritable at each other. It was actually quite entertaining, the amount of honking that was going on, like just fucking move kind of honks that bus drivers are doing to other bus drivers. While there, in fact, with somebody else that was going to get on a 57, there was a 57 that was actually taking off from the transit center, but it was taking off at the same time as another bus. I can't remember what route it was, but another bus, and it was waiting to leave the transit center because there was foot traffic crossing the transit center exit, and of course there was also traffic going up and down the road that goes along, that leads into the transit center. And it was waiting for the traffic to clear out so it had a window of opportunity to actually leave the transit center. And the 57 driver literally had just gotten behind that other bus, and he was still technically moving the bus, and he fucking honked at the driver, and I just had to laugh at it because it's like, did he, and I literally said to them, it's like, did he, the 57 driver really just honk at the other bus driver in front of him? What the fuck? Because he just got there, and he's already like, move! So, yeah, and then shortly before I left, I think I actually got it on my last Periscope stream, which you can see on my Twitter, that I got there, which is like a 24-minute stream. I think it's near the tail end of it. But near the tail end when I was there was another bus driver who was like just fucking just mashing the fuck out of his steering wheel, so the horn. You could tell he was fucking livid as fuck. And he was honking at a bus that was parked over in layover directly in front of his bus that was off. Which, obviously, the driver in the other bus that was honking aggressively should have instinctively known that means that there's likely no bus driver inside of the bus. So then he's backing up and he's freaking mashing it longer and harder, his horn, as he's reversing so he can get around the bus. And then he pulls up aggressively and then stops to try and look directly in the driver's seat or into the bus to try to see if there's a driver he can, chew out. Nobody in the bus, of course. So he just kind of sits there, and then he finally decides to take off and do whatever route he was going to do and pick up people. But yeah, the drivers fucking hate the system themselves as well. So now you're pissing off your own drivers as well because they're not having it. So that's the fourth observance I had. And then the fifth observance is, again, with the severe lack of people for being rush hour on the MAX trains, getting on or off, and just on the MAX trains in general, they were like half filled on average, which doesn't make any sense during rush hour, especially, again, on Mondays. I don't know where everybody was, but they weren't there. So no chaos really was had because of that, because there wasn't the typical load of people that would be there on a Monday during evening rush hour coming home. There was a lot of people still, though, that consistently were pooling, of course, to the north side of the transit center, so the north side stop, the pickup stop that they've implemented, where the 52, the 88, 76, 78, and can't remember the other bus line that goes there. What that one is, but anyway. So the most heavily used routes, actually, for the west side, those are the ones that go to that stop. And, again, with the exception of the 57, those are the ones that go to that stop. And so there's just the majority of people were hoarding at that stop. And you can even see in those streams that literally the waste of money they did. Like the investment they did into this change is they bought a new sign for outside of the transit center to demarcate, hey, look, there's a west crossing nearby, and also the transit center is literally what you're looking at if you look this direction. Makes perfect sense. So they bought a brand new sign and a road that like almost nobody drives on. And then they also bought, of course, 2 other new signs to demarcate these new pickup zones for these other ones. So they bought those. And then the last thing they bought to really invest in their future for this new use of transit center as not a transit center is, for some reason, 2 tiny cheap ass little bus shelters, and that's it. They're smaller. They're probably slightly smaller, I would say, than most of the bus stops you see on the side of the road. That is the actual shelters, so the glass ones. It's slightly smaller. Lighter blue, color blue, but 2 brand new ones they put there. It can fit at most, like, I'd say 3 skinny people per. Like, and when I say skinny, I mean like, toothpick type of people. Probably 3 at most, without them being in against each other, shoulder to shoulder. In the each of the shelters, so a total 6. On average, you'd probably fit 1 to 2, probably 2 people on average per a shelter. So yeah, great investments, quality investments, for sure. Typical of TriMet. So that's all they invested in that. So that's what they did. And randomly just deciding to have extra buses for whatever reason. So yeah. Who knows? Maybe at some point in the future, I might go back down there again, one of these other week evenings, and try to get again that true crush load, rush hour, traffic there. You just see how many people get flustered, pissed off, whatever else. Yeah, but it brings me to my sixth, I should say, and final observance. My 6th and final observance is this. They decided. This proves that they knew it didn't make sense and it was confusing, and it would confuse the fuck out of people. And that is, they hired, or rather, I should say, they assigned 6 supervisors. Supervisors. These are the people who are supposed to supervise bus drivers and max line operators and West, engineers. For some reason, they assigned them to Beaverton Transit Center, 6 of them, 2 per vehicle, so they had 3 of their vehicles parked there as well, which, guess what, takes over layover space of about 2 buses because of how far parked they were apart for whatever reason. So they had 6 supervisors there to quite literally just kind of stand there all day and do nothing at all. Unless they saw a passenger that clearly was confused. If they saw somebody who was clearly confused and wasn't sure where to go, what was going on, they would then approach that person and ask them what bus line you're trying to take. Did you hear about this change? And this or this is the stop you need to go to be picked up. You cannot be picked up at any of these other places. They're now drop off only. Yeah. So, yeah, for whatever reason, there is basically just paid to stand there all day and do nothing, sitting there in case somebody got really confused, and that was it. Again, typical TriMet. So yeah, I guess I'll throw in a 7th observance that I did notice, even though I don't think this one really says much or matters that much. It might actually somebody might have a better perspective to actually think and be like, oh, that shows that this is really stupid in this way. And that seven observance is that trying to think. Uh, right. So for whatever reason, all the bus drivers, when they got into the transit center, because they all had to lay over mandatorily and wait for whatever buses were in front of them in order to go to the stop and pick up and then go. They would pull in at random to whatever space they could find. They would just pull in at random. And suffice it to say that if you're familiar with Beaverton Transit Center, if you're entering and going around north this way, but you're going to come out facing east, so basically you go in and so the north side, the north side, but you're going eastbound in it. So you enter the north side. There's only 4 slots on that island, because it's the center island of the transit center that those buses can slot at. There's 4 slots for them on that side, and on the east side there's 1, because it's a little island, and then of course there's 3 others. I think, I don't even think it's 4. I'm pretty sure it's 3 on the south side of the island. Those are already one of those slots is actually not strictly reserved for the pickup spot for the 5 lines that are on that side. And then, so that reduces it to 2, 1, and then 3. So you have 6. You have 6 slots. And the problem is that when you have so many fucking buses, it's an absurd amount of buses. It's excessive amount of buses they always have there now on layover. Again, including the duplicates of these other buses that are already on the same line, which doesn't make any sense in the first place. That takes up, 40 feet of extra space in layover position, and then some plus the spacing. And so you even have the bus drivers parking literally as close as this to making the buses actually touch front to back, because there just was so little space. And that means that it's even more difficult for bus drivers to have to then navigate through that on both sides, just being nothing but buses, just wall to wall. You have the narrowest of little space to navigate your bus around, especially around that tight corner like this. It's kind of like a semi-hairpin to get out, or vice versa. And so that, no doubt, obviously frustrated and pissed off the bus drivers too, because it's like, what the fuck are they even doing? But the point for mentioning that is that there's just so many freaking buses there now. It's ridiculous. And so it's a free-for-all for what bus will go where. So even the slots where normally, naturally, the 57, before this change, the 57 would have gone and slotted itself. Apparently the 61 Express, which even a lot of us longtime Beaverton, bus route riders are like, when the fuck did they create the 61 Express? When did this even come into existence? And moreover, why the fuck is it coming from? It literally, all it says on its light bar, its destination bar, is Express, Beaverton Transit Center. That's it. It doesn't say where it's coming from. And nobody apparently knew that this was even a line that existed until today. So it's like, okay. But yeah, so 57, 61 apparently, 58, 54, 20, all the different bus lines. Apparently the first half of the day, they were actually going into their natural normal slots that they would have gone into before, if this change hadn't occurred. But then on the second half of the day, so when I was there this evening, for whatever reason, they were it was a fucking, battle royale free-for-all for, well, there's a space, go get it. But then suddenly another bus would pull into that space, and another bus behind them would pull into it, and then that bus driver would be like, what the fuck? Because now they have to go all the way back around again just to get into another slot, or they have to put themselves in a place that they're not supposed to be, which wouldn't make sense. There was at least one bus driver I saw that had to go all the way back out of the transit center and then back in again to try to get into a certain spot that they found open, if barely. to be able to drop people off and then lay over at. Like, there was, at one point, there was two 57s. They came in literally back to back, and they were both running the line. It wasn't like they just, one of them came from the garage and the other one didn't, or got swapped from a different line. It was literally, these were two 57s that got somehow lost their separation between them, and literally wound up running the line, you know, front to tail of each other. So they came in at the exact same time, and that was one of the times where there was one single slot left for a layover. So the first 57 pulled into that, and then the other 57 driver just sat there in the middle of the pathway, you know, the roadway in the transit center for the buses to go through. He literally just sat there for like, I think it was like 2.5 minutes straight, just sitting there with the bus running and everything, clearly trying to figure out where the fuck am I supposed to go, and he eventually just gave up, and he went and he put the bus in the only space that was still available, which isn't a space for buses, it's a space for everybody to cross from the max platforms in the north side of the transit center to the island of the transit center, and then of course cross to west if you wanted to get right the west. So he parked it on top of that crossing area, and blocked everybody off that needed to get to that other pickup stop to catch the 57, the 20, the 54, the 58, you know. And he just parked it there because there wasn't anywhere for him to go, and he just didn't want to sit in the middle. So he's just like, fine, I'll fucking park it here because I have nowhere to lay over and drop people off. So that's where he put it, which I thought like put perfectly the cherry on top of like, this is how fucking stupid this is, because they don't even have a space to go now, and it's literally a free-for-all battle royale, pure dysfunction. It's fucking dumb, but we all knew it was fucking dumb and didn't make any sense. But welcome to TriMet. They make the least logistical decisions they possibly can and implement them, and every single time they claim it's because it was requested, or, and this is truly what they claim every single time, is it increases efficiency and reliability. It decreases the time between buses. Right, yeah. It helps them stay on schedule more. It fucking doesn't. The entire world would be giving blood-curdling screams if one of them out there, like say Europe, decided to try to do the same thing in a transit center, because you just don't do that. It makes no logistical sense whatsoever. It makes a logistical nightmare for you as a transit agency. And it's not how a transit center works. It absolutely isn't. So it's just fucking dumb. But welcome to TriMet. They make the least logical decisions they possibly could, and then claim that they're fucking transit mecca because apparently they only make the best decisions. So yeah, but anyway, so those are my observances from today. I could neither confirm nor deny if my assumption, which I still assume is the truth, is when you have the proper rush hour crush load trains just pouring in from Portland, that it's going to be the biggest horror show possible. Primarily because of the fact that, if you think about it, they took out, at the same exact time, they've permanently shut down and are going to completely take out the Kings Hill Southwest Salmon and the 4th, 5th, or Mall and 4th Avenue stop. And they claim, again, increases efficiency, speed, and time of trains, right? Well, even somebody who's mentally retarded, and I kid you not, would be able to immediately tell you that makes no fucking sense. Because the only thing that makes sense, and that is blatantly obvious immediately, even if you have no idea about how transit works, you would immediately be able to tell that's actually the opposite of what it really would do and what really happens. Because you're already over capacity during evening rush hour at Pioneer Square, which is the next stop up, and most of the other downtown stops, but especially Pioneer Square. And you're going to tell us that it's going to increase the or decrease the amount of time between trains and decrease the total amount of time transited from east to west. My ass. Because obviously that's bullshit. Because all those people now that would have used that stop are now just going to all flood over into the already overfill, or overcapacity Pioneer Square stop, or Pioneer Place, whichever one's next door to them. And for Kings Hill South Salmon, it's going to be either Goose Hollow or I can't remember the stop that's. Is it Yamhill? I don't think it is. I don't know. Whatever the next stop is from down towards downtown, or no, it's Providence Park. That's what it is. Yeah, Providence Park. Those are the next two stops. So they're all going to flood to those ones. There's no other choice for them to go to. So everybody that would have used that one is now flooding to one or the other. Probably Goose Hollow. Maybe Providence Park, probably Goose Hollow though. But yeah, and then downtown on the 4th Avenue stop being gone, they're all going to flood almost exclusively to Pioneer Square. I can guarantee you that. And therefore, it's going to increase the total amount of time that it takes a train to move on through downtown. And thus, overall, on the line, it's going to take longer for trains to get through, for obvious reasons. So, yeah. And then you're going to have, obviously, even more crush-loaded trains for longer periods, because now you have more people waiting at these stops, and it extends the total amount of time they have to wait to get onto another train that may or may not have space that they can cram onto. And so, yeah, you're left with, blatantly, obviously, this case of there's an extensive amount more time total that you're going to have to take. And not only that, that expands and extends the total amount of time that people have to go from work to home at rush hour. Because they have to wait that much longer for that many more trains to go by before they might be able to squeeze on again into a fucking Kipperton. Like, it's already that way, so now that they've done this, it's going to be even more so that way. So they just kind of fucked themselves over and shot themselves in the foot and said, look, we improved efficiency. Why? Because they just throw out claims that are obviously bullshit, and they know are bullshit, but they don't give a fuck. So, and that's why so many of us get out there. Like this case today, a lot of us transit riders and TriMet watchdogs and all that stuff went out there to Beaverton Transit Center this evening to try to document the shit, let alone a lot of us are there periodically throughout the day. But no rush hour ever happened today, which doesn't really make sense. Plus everybody's just so paranoid that maybe even employers are just like, stay home, work remotely. Like, we normally wouldn't do that, but yeah, we don't want to get coronavirus or something, so who the fuck knows? But anyway, so that's this, I guess, the summary of it all. So yeah, so whenever rush hour decides to be rush hour again, with everything I just said before this, with the max line and thus the Beaverton Transit Center situation as well, it's gonna guaranteed, I can just about guarantee you, it will 100% extend rush hour crush loads to between 30 minutes to an hour and a half longer. So it'll be, instead of 4 to 6 being the bulk load of the crush load time for max trains and for buses and everything, rush hour, it'll actually be probably more 4 to 7 is instead of 4 to 6. So it'll be even longer. Actually, now that I think about it, a really interesting observation just in general for today on the transit system is, for some reason today, Willow Creek Transit Center was just a little bit more busier consistently than Beaverton Transit Center was while I was there. And in fact, from stuff I've seen from all the other people that were there periodically throughout the day, recording all the happenings and goings on and how things were evolving as drivers and everybody else were getting used to this bullshit. Yeah, they're like they were saying, it's like Beaverton Transit Center today, especially for a Monday, has been a fucking ghost town. It's like there's like nobody in it. There's nobody there. It's the weirdest. Nobody really going through for Beaverton Transit Center on weekdays. Like, nobody's there. It's just empty. It's like a skeleton of itself. It's the weirdest thing. Meanwhile, it's not like there isn't a lot of people in the system, because there was throughout the day. Like, I went up and down from Willow Creek to Hawthorne Farm and back twice today. So that's 4 trips on the max. And both times, there was so many people going in and out of the trains there and in and out of the buses, and they were, waiting for buses or waiting for the trains. Like, there's just so many people that were using Willow Creek today. But Beaverton Transit Center was a skeleton in comparison. It was like there was nobody there. And also, Beaverton Transit Center is considered their most heavily used transit center. Even TriMet themselves is their most heavily used transit center in the entire system. That, or I'd say Gateway or Park Rose, but yeah, it's definitely, Beaverton is a contender for that. It probably is the busiest one. But yeah, you just think about that, and it's like, where did all the people go? It lost its status in one foul swoop in one single day. It's weird. To Willow Creek. Like, then again, Willow Creek actually, at least in the winter season, well, actually, sorry, not the winter, the autumn season last year, the autumn quarter report, Willow Creek was the 5th most heavily used going westbound, and it was the, I think, 7th most heavily used stop on the entire MAX system going eastbound. And you gotta remember, it goes from the Hatfield Center in the west end of Hillsborough all the way to, like, eastern edge of central Gresham. And that's a long distance to traverse, especially considering you're going, you're weaving, going up and down, north, south, in and out, and all that. And you have to, go through a pre-existing, road networks and stuff. Like, that's incredible. That's a long distance to cover, and yet the 5th and 7th most used stop on the entire system, and there's hordes of stops on the system. 5th and 7th, I mean, you think about it, all the stops in downtown Portland, and all the stops in west side and east side, and then you have all the stops in Gresham and, the Park Row Sumner, Gateway, Hollywood. But Willow Creek? What? Even more than El Monica, which is the wackiest thing, because every single time in my life I've ever taken the train through El Monica both ways, there is, I'd say, comparable to probably more people that at least get off there going westbound than at Willow Creek. There's a lot to get off at Willow Creek, but I'd say it's comparable to actually Beaverton Transit Center, the amount of people that get off there, especially during evening rush hour. So it legitimately surprises me, but I don't know. Anyway, now I'm just digressing, going off on a different thing that's semi-related. But yeah, that's another observance I had, is just there was a lot of people that were using Willow Creek today, but there wasn't really, Beaverton Transit Center was a complete ghost town, even during rush hour. There was like nobody there. Nobody really going through it. It might as well have been just some random stop halfway between the east end of Portland and the west end of Gresham or something. Like, seriously, it was enough to say, yeah, people use it, but it wasn't much more than that. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, when we actually get the rush hour back and the proper use of Beaverton Transit Center back, that's when the true chaos and hellfire that I was talking about actually will commence, and will very likely extend it again to like 7 o'clock instead. So people will getting home late, and then they'll be even grumpier. They'll have even less sleep to go to work again, and that means they're going to be overall collectively even more disgruntled with the entire system, and probably more irritable people. So there'll be possibly more incidents on the system, which would also mean that there's going to be more reliability and consistency issues on all the bus and MAX routes. So yeah, even more increased inefficiency from this decision making they've had. But again, as I keep saying, welcome to TriMet, their entire existence. Seriously, they make the dumbest decisions. And as a lifelong reliant writer on their system, and a complete lifelong transit enthusiast and geek, it kills me inside to know that I have to use this shit excuse for a transit system, especially as they just keep making it worse and less reliable, and it's just inexcusable. But welcome to the world. And again, they could spend money on, you know, actually improving buses and actually getting properly reliable buses, let alone good buses that actually have at least some semblance of comfort in them, rather than, hey, let's cut off the blood circulation in your legs because we are so cheap we had to get the chintziest thin plastic seats we could, and make our buses break down because they can't handle heat above 90 degrees driving. And they can't handle the snow enough, or even just the slightest flurries. Then they start to break down because it's too cold at like mid-30s. So then you bring out the 2500 series new flyers, which are like 20-year-old buses, because they actually are reliable. They actually do work. And they're actually slightly more comfortable. Like, it's the stupidest thing. So yeah, they could invest in the buses. They can invest in the system itself by actually doing real bus lanes, you know? Actual bus lanes, not bus lanes that they have throughout like the near and east side in Portland along like Belmont and Hawthorne and stuff, where they allow parking at all times in the bus lane. So you, in the end, can't use the bus lane at all as a bus because everybody's parking in it, because they allow parking in a bus only lane. You know, so it's a figurative bus lane, but it's not actually. But you can't say they didn't implement bus lanes. That's basically the way that they were thinking. But if you can make it a real bus lane, very well demarcated, and then you could do that for the most heavily used lines at least, you know, and then for the entire routes, and then of course at the same time you add the priority and all traffic signals and intersections for the buses and pedestrians, and you make sure that you add, you know, the cameras in the front and back of the bus that will automatically click into a computer system that's pretty much already in the bus. They just add some software to it. So it pops into the system. Every time it sees somebody driving in the bus lane, it'll automatically take a picture of the car, take a picture of the license plate, and then it will immediately log it into a system that is basically directly connected to the police system, so that the police system, the transit system has a permanent record now of offenders, but the police have it too. So the police can then immediately go, whatever way possible, whether it's through the mail or on the door or whatever else, officially ticket that person and fine them for basically disobeying traffic laws by using a bus only lane. And believe it or not, doing all of that is extensively cheap. It's like, on average, you're paying between like 500,000 and upwards of maybe at most a couple of $1,000,000 per bus line. So that's also each of the buses on those lines, which could be upwards of 10 or 12 at rush hour time if you do it right. You know, and not buying any new buses, like, that's literally, you're like 500,000 to 2 million. If you buy new buses, then it goes more like 1 million to upwards of 10 million per a full bus rapid transit line. If you do that to every bus line, the entire line of them, they could put the money into that. But instead, what they do is they put the money into capital projects known as max lines that literally nobody wants. Ridership doesn't want. They reject it handily, 83%. With this latest one, which is the Southwest Corridor project, otherwise known as the Purple Line Max, ridership and even the residents, the ridership rejected it handily by 80% of the vote said fuck no, and bus rapid transit only. And then if you do anything with this route, and then the average residents rejected it by 83% and said fuck no, and bus rapid transit only if you're going to do anything with this route. And they bail out of it because they realized they weren't getting what they wanted. So they're like, okay, fuck you guys then. And they went to the businesses and the elites of the Southwest Corridor region. So they went to them for the vote, and they barely squeaked it past 153, 147. 153 in favor, 147 out of favor. They almost got spurned by both groups. It went into hiding for a year. Let Metro be their mouthpiece for it instead for a year. Then they came back and they're like, okay, now that's been a year, and we pushed the tax bond measure out by a year, known as the transportation bond measure. In other words, here, pay for this max line. You, the taxpayer, you're paying the hundreds of, the whole hundreds of, not hundreds of billions, but tens of billions of dollars, multi-billion-dollar max line. That's going to be like 7 to 14 miles in length. That's it, of train line. But that much, and it's not even going to do a tunnel. But like 7 to 12 billion dollars guaranteed it will cost, and we will be paying 95 to 98% of that, and they will force it down our throats like they did with the orange line, which we also rejected, and the green line, which we also rejected, because they always do that. They do what they want. They don't give a fuck about us, and they never will. And that's why they make dumb decisions all the time, because they don't give a fuck. That's what they invest in, is these fucking capital projects known as max lines, otherwise known as gentrification machines. That's purely what maxes are for actually gentrification only. And then, yeah, you have that, and, they invest in apparently shitty-ass shelters that can fit like 3 people if they're really small / skinny, or 2 if they're average sized people per shelter. 2 shelters for a single one of the stops at Beaverton Transit Center for 5 bus lines, including 3 of the most heavily used in the entire system. And then you have a random fucking sign they invested in and bought and implemented just outside of the transit center on a road that like nobody drives on except for the buses, because that makes total sense. That demarcated, hey, by the way, this is in fact Beaverton Transit Center over here, and the west is over here, by the way, too, so you should look. Like, great use of funds and money. Yep. Also, a useless bridge that doesn't even function how you fucking wanted it to. Like, oh, we're gonna make it for this. Doesn't work. Who would have fucking thought? That's why there's the term pork barrel existing in the transit community, because it's basically that. There's a bunch of fucking pigs who take kickbacks for these stupid capital projects that do nothing except become these landmark features for tourism boards of the local community. It's fucking stupid. Anyway, I digress. See, I've been digressing now for the last 10 minutes, so on semi-related, branching off as I do. So anyway, I'm gonna end this here. Summary ended like, what, 35 minute mark? So I'd say 32 minute mark, I think, is when I ended it. So 12 minutes ago. So I'm actually gonna end this right here, right now, because I've gone on for longer than I intended to. I almost cut it off at the exact time I needed to, which was right when I said the last observance I had. So anyway, yeah, I hope you guys got the gist, and feel free to give me updates on the situation and let me know if you consistently have to utilize Beaverton Transit Center from here on out to get to and fro work and home, because I would really like to see what you guys have observed and the kind of chaos that has been created as a result, or even just in general. If you're a Max rider through downtown Portland, let me know how much worse it's gotten in the comments, because I would love to know that, and I guarantee you there's a lot of the rest of us in this area, in the Portland area, that would love to know this too. Even if it's to rub it in their face or put it in their face and say, see, we're proving that you guys make fucking stupid decisions, and we already know you're gonna say, oh, it's not a stupid decision, it's improved efficiency. Look, we got 1 more rider, even though they fabricate their fucking ridership figures all the time. So, but again, I'm starting to digress again because I have a hard time not ranting about this stuff. So anyway, ending it here. So, thank you guys for sticking around and watching this whole bullshit. So, yeah, that's the summary and then some, by accident, of evening at Beaverton Transit Center. So yeah. Let me know in the comments below, though, how much worse it's gotten, or how much, like, just what you observed and what you think of it down below. I think a lot of us in the community would love to know and be updated on that. So, otherwise, yeah, see you guys later. Goodbye.